Good morning, ladies and gents. Welcome to another awesome Friday. Great to have you on board here for our Insight webinar for today with Susan Rochester, the 250K mistake in waiting. Today is kind of the culmination of knowing Susan for quite a few years now and sitting down and spending some time and just sort of basking in a couple of things. Her knowledge of the topic of anything to do with hiring, culture, leadership, and basically just getting the best out of people, but also interspersed with just this awesome amount of practical takeaways that I've taken every time we have sat down and spoken. So it's an absolute pleasure to be able to sit down and sort of share some of what she knows with you. What's so important about this today, and the title is really key, 250K mistake. A while ago, I was working with a dear client of mine, and I guess you could say one of the employees they brought on board just didn't work out. They left. And after a period of adjustment, we looked back on the process and did some sums and tried to work out what the cost of getting the wrong person, of that person not performing in the team, and the eventual, need to go and find someone else. And we added the sums, and for a relatively, it wasn't a huge business at that point. It was a $250,000 mistake. It was a $250,000 mistake because the hire wasn't right, the performance wasn't right. And that really sort of brought it home for me that although some of this stuff is not always seen as being the most, essential part. A lot of people sort of leave the HR until the end because they see it as a lesser thing. So often, I talk to advisors about what the headaches in their business are, and I either come out with, it's to do with this person, or I can't find the right person, I can't get the person to perform in this role, or alternatively, it's something to do with, I can't get this people stuff. Well, that's what we're going to have a crack at today. And this isn't just a small piece. For those of you I've told this story to before, excuse me for repeating myself, but a while ago, Airbnb, the New York sort of powerhouse of selective leasing, published a blog telling a story about when they first got funded. And the story was around them sat in the office with Peter Thiel, the famous PayPal investor, the Facebook guy who was writing a check for $500 million. And at that point, as they were shaking, going through this process that was going to transform their business, they turned to Peter, who is an absolute legend in investing. And they said, Peter, what's the one bit of advice you give us as we spend your $500 million? And he just looked them dead in the eyes and said, don't F up the culture. And I think it's really telling that out of everything he could have told them to, don't be too cheap, get the right people, invest in systems. It was the culture that he said to get right. So today we're going to go deep on that. And I'm going to share with you Susan's incredible experience in this space, and as well as answer some of the questions you have. So this is an interactive webinar. I would love you to walk out of here with some of the questions you need answered. Without further ado, let me just pull up. Susan will unmute her.
Hi, am I there?
You are here. How are you?
Great. Fantastic.
Awesome. Welcome to the Insight webinar. With me, Tony Robbins.
Looking forward to it.
It's a bit like that this morning, but anyway. Hey, thank you so much for joining us. First thing I'd love to just give everybody an idea of where are you? Where's home? What's the morning been like? Give us a bit of the morning routine that goes on for you.
It's different every day.
Right.
I do like to have a lot of variety, but it probably is different every day. I live in Glenbrook in the beautiful Blue Mountains, and that's where I'm speaking to you from now, and it's a bit chilly.
It's the Blue Mountains.
That's right. Yeah.
Actually, I think we're due up there this weekend, because this weekend in the Blue Mountains, if I'm not wrong, is Winter Magic.
It absolutely is. Yes, come along to Winter Magic. It's fabulous, especially with kids.
It's so good. I took Hermione, my youngest, when she was 2, and for those who haven't been to Winter Magic, it's kind of a cross between a standard sort of market. There's a bit of new age stuff in there. There's a bit of Harry Potter dress up, and there's definitely a bit of goth slashed in with a bit of Dungeons and Dragons live action role play.
And I'd say a bit of Mardi Gras too.
Definitely a bit of Mardi Gras. It's one of my favorite things in Sydney, because it's just nobody cares. Everyone does their thing.
And if you're lucky, it's freezing cold, and you might get sleet or snow.
Yeah. Well, we were originally going to go over the mountains to the orange thing and then come back, but we just decided to come up for the day. That's good. How did you end up in the Blue Mountains?
We lived in the western suburbs for a while, near Parramatta, and one of those, you know, odd things where there was an extra lane put on the M4, and we thought, okay, it's more feasible to live in the mountains where we'd always enjoyed spending time. So
I love it.
and I'm only an hour from Central on the train, so
it's a beautiful train ride to the mountains as well, because you kind of go through the.
It's nice to get home. You know, I remember when I was a kid, we lived out of Sydney as well. My dad commuted, but the thing he always said was, well, when I'm home, I'm where I want to be. I'm somewhere, you know, really lovely. So I guess I'm just following in his footsteps.
They say that, you know, you've made it when you can split your time halfway, you know, between the coast and the mountains. So,
well, that would be nice. That's one thing that I miss about the mountains. There's no beach.
Hey, for those who don't know you, Susan, I know you obviously really, really well. Can you just give them a quick overview of, you know, who you are, what you do, and who you help?
Okay, so I'm Managing Director of Balance at Work, and we've been going since July 2006. And we work primarily with businesses from the SME up to about 500 employees, and we consult related to their people management and culture areas. So sometimes we're working alongside an HR department and filling in gaps that they don't have the time or resources to do, and other times we're jumping in for specific projects in businesses that don't have an HR department.
Okay, and is it mainly the fact that people want to bring you in as an external sort of viewpoint, or they don't have the skills, or there are other reasons that people would engage someone like you?
Both of the above, I guess. Yep. Yeah. Cool. We do get involved in recruiting, but only from the perspective of helping people screen using Harrison assessments, which is a psychometric assessment that
which I really want to talk about today, because they're an incredible set of assessment tools. So what do you do when you're not working?
I garden when I can get outside. I recently did a mosaic course, so that was a bit of an eye-opener to me, because I thought mosaics were like, you know, tiled tables and bathrooms, but it's actually quite fascinating and artistic. I sing. I belong to a local a glee club, and what else? I read. I love to read. As you know, you and I have chatted over and shared many different book recommendations.
This is true. And you have a habit of, I'll just mention a book, and next thing I know, you said, that was a great book, and you've read it like in 3 days or something stupid like that. You must read a lot of books. Do you read a lot of books every week, or what's your consumption?
Oh, look, I would like to. Actually, my laptop at this very moment is sitting on 4 books that I have yet to read. They're all business books. Yeah. I think I was reading somewhere recently that we tend to purchase things that, you know, when we're accumulating stuff, it's who you wish you were rather than who you are. So I've realised that I buy books because I wish I had the time to read them.
That's actually really interesting. That would explain why I buy so much fitness equipment and yet don't use it. There you go. As you know, we discussed this. I like to ask the Tony Zappos question to give people insight. On a scale of 1 to 10, how weird are you, Susan?
It's a hard one to judge yourself, isn't it? I have 2 daughters who are 24 and 22, and they're constantly telling me I'm a weirdo.
Right.
So I guess I'm probably around the 8, if not higher, but I'm not really sure what it is that makes me weird.
I've found the average seems to be about 7, which is kind of like, you know, there's the bell curve. You know all about bell curves. There's the bell curve average, which says that, you know, 5 is about the middle. But most people generally consider themselves above average. So it's actually, most people consider themselves above average weirdness. So. Well,
I was facilitating a session yesterday, and I asked this group of 25 people managers where they thought they were on their organisation being one team, and on a scale of 1 to 10. And of course, people, including the CEO, said 7. And then the CEO said, well, actually, that's the cop-out. Everyone says 7 when they're put on the spot on a scale of 1 to 10.
That's actually pretty fair. I think Chris Unwin when I did a webinar with him, he just said, I'm a 2. I'm completely, I was like, that's in itself is weird that you're saying you're
Yeah,
not.
that's right.
So you're a 9 straight off the bat.
Alain de Botton, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. One of his things is that when you first meet someone, particularly in a romantic situation, but it would apply to any situation, you should have a discussion about what makes you weird, and so that everyone's fully aware of each other's weirdness. I wouldn't recommend it as an interview question, though.
Yeah, no, you never know what you're going to get back.
Yeah.
I think in all this time coaching people, I've realized how complex human beings are when they actually sort of pull away the sheets and just be themselves.
That's what makes what we do so fascinating.
That's true. I would love to get an understanding. What's the journey that took you from, where you started to right here, sat here chatting to me, doing what you do in maybe a couple of minutes?
I was going to say, how long have we got? Because it's a long journey. I'm 58, Well, I graduated originally with a BSc in zoology. And,
there you go.
Pardon?
Zoology.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. There's a left turn.
Yeah, kind of. It was in animal behaviour, so yeah.
Well, I guess you've gone from sort of simple animal behaviour to the most complex animal behaviour.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So I worked in scientific research for about half a dozen years, and part of that time I was working in Sweden. I was in a lab in Sweden. I was in my mid-20s. The lady I was working with turned 40, which of course seemed so old to me then. And I just thought, I do not want to be doing this when I'm 40. So when we came back to Australia, I started looking around for other jobs, and I ended up going into sales and then into project coordination at the university. I've worked at a few different universities. And sorry, good. Thank you.
Just me messing around.
Panic. Okay.
No.
And by virtue of being in the project coordination role, I was in the consulting company of Uni of New South Wales. I was there for 8 years, 2 children born in that time, but I also did a lot of training, and that sort of piqued my interest in human resources, and I went on to do a master's in HR through Charles Sturt, which I finished the same day or the same week as I resigned a job I wasn't happy in, and went in the city to surf and fell over and landed on my elbow and exploded the ball of my humerus. And so, people talk about careers and planning your career. There's a lot about careers that isn't planned. And that was one thing for me, because my plan was to be an HR contractor, but I couldn't use a computer or drive a car at that stage. So, yeah, so that was 2003, and then, gradually moved into consulting and started Balance at Work in 2006, and here we are.
So Balance at Work, what was the initial motivator to go and do this for yourself?
Yeah, so my first connection with the financial advice industry was actually through a man called Don Swanborough.
Yeah.
And Don had a lot of clients who had everything right in terms of their sales, marketing, structure, processes, but they needed help with the people stuff. So he got me to coach clients.
Yep.
And we then formed Balance at Work on the basis of a tool that we had then, which was a whole set of policies and procedures that people could access over the internet. As it turned out, most people didn't just want that, they wanted someone to do it for them.
Yeah.
So various iterations, Don and I went our separate ways, and I kept Balance at Work going, but I soon realised that, as we were saying, we were warming up, a lot of my time was spent cleaning up other people's mess. They've hired the wrong person and they want me to do something about it. I found that a real energy suck. And so then I went looking for a tool that could help me be proactive in helping our clients. And that's how I found Harrison Assessments, which I've been using since 2008.
That's fantastic.
Mm.
How has the business evolved, particularly in the last, say, 5 or 6 years, or maybe even a bit longer?
Yeah, after Don and I went our separate ways at the end of 2007, as I said, there was a change of direction into using the Harrison. I've always had one admin person backing me up with all that sort of stuff, but in the last, about 12 months ago, I hired a part-time consultant who could do the same thing as I do.
Mm-hmm.
And about 6 months ago, I hired a manager client projects who is responsible for sort of coordinating our projects, but also because we do work with some larger organisations where we need that process, but she's also responsible for business development because she has a lovely mix of both skill sets.
Beautiful. And what kind of manager are you?
Very collaborative until I need to be directive and sometimes, you know, realise that I should have been directive a bit earlier on. Yeah, yeah.
Very good. And like, I may as well ask this, what's the number one lesson that you've learned in managing people as your business has grown?
For me, it's give clear instructions, assume nothing.
Love it. A guy called Carl Taylor, who's part of a coaching group, he's actually a computer programmer, and he talks about, particularly working with outsourced staff, he says, if you can think like a programmer when you're managing staff, it makes things easier. Think if and then statements. As in, if this happens, then please do this. If this happens, then please do this. If this happens, then do that. Anyway, and it's been a really useful way of thinking about two things: being clear, but also giving people multiple options. So it's not a task driven; it's a decision or autonomy driven thing with guidelines.
Yeah, so you're looking at the outcomes. And a good expression I heard yesterday is that you're providing guardrails.
Love it, guardrails.
Yeah.
Better than training wheels.
The trouble is, though, for a lot of us in smaller businesses, we tend to think, oh, that's so much trouble. You know, I've got to take time to do that. I might as well do it myself. If I had $1 for every time I heard that from a business owner, I'd be much richer than I am today. But it is worth it.
I went to a speaking sort of wine and cheese event with a lady called Connie McCaig of, I think, One View.
Right.
Yeah, and she's a great people manager, bit of a disruptor in the industry. But she said, you know, a lot of the times when she's been sort of managing teams, people say, why can't we just get on and do this? Why do we have to spend so long getting people on board explaining? And she always says the same thing. She says, it's easier to get everybody on the bus to begin with than have to reverse the bus up at multiple times on the road to go back and pick people up. So I don't know if that's a good analogy, but it made a lot of sense to me at the time.
Yeah, I like it. Back to Jim Collins, isn't it? Having the right people on the bus.
So let's get stuck into a little bit about what you do. If we can break this down, maybe talk a little bit about hiring, and then maybe talk about culture, and I think that'll naturally lead us into some of the stuff we've spoken about with coaching. So let's talk about hiring. Talk to me about the kind of the work you do, the mistakes you make, and you know, to steal Zoraida's questions, what are the things that you really recommend people embrace when it comes to finding the right people, and most importantly, ideally, weeding out those who it's just not going to work?
Yeah. Well, the number one thing, which isn't probably isn't what you're expecting me to say, is to know what you're looking for in the first place.
Okay.
So quite often, and I've seen many advisors do this, they've reached a certain stage of growth, they can't do it all themselves, or you know, with the team that they've got, they need to bring someone in, but it's hiring in panic mode. So it's like, well, we need this done, we need someone to do it, and as long as they can string two words together, we'll bring them in and include them in the business. And that's the first mistake. So really the first thing you need to do is sit down and say, what exactly are we looking for?
Yep.
And what exactly do we need them to do? And then from knowing what you need them to do, then it's not that hard to work out what you want them to bring to the business. And don't get confused between writing a very attractive advertisement and what that person's going to do in the day-to-day, because that's a recipe for disaster too.
So
and I recently came across that.
Can you go a bit deeper on, you know, what if you, in an ideal world, if you had the advertisement on the left and the you know, exactly what you talked about, the definition of what that you want them to do on the right, what would be the fundamental difference between the two? You know, what are the things that you are really important to get your head around?
Do you mean in what do you need to put in the ad?
Yeah, I probably think maybe that's the question I want to ask.
Yeah. Well, I guess
you.
what all I'm saying is be honest. You know, I'll give you the example that I'm thinking of that happened recently, where somebody had advertised for a junior marketing role, which was essentially going to be an admin role. You know, they were going to be filing, they were going to be doing boring clerical stuff. But the job advertisement made it sound like it was, you know, high-level whiz-bang marketing. So that was misleading, would have attracted the wrong candidates. Would have wasted a lot of time interviewing people who didn't really want to do the job that you wanted them to do. So be honest, even to the extent of actually putting the pay rate in the ad.
Wow,
so you can say range or whatever. This is a bit of a controversial one, but I think why not let people screen themselves out? If you can't afford to pay, you know, 90,000 for a CSO and you can only afford to pay 50, then why waste time interviewing the 90,000 person? So
can I ask a couple of questions on this one?
Yeah, please do. I'm happy to be challenged on anything.
It's not challenging. It's actually, I'd love to know, because where do you stand on the pay a bunch of money to get someone awesome versus just pay for what you can afford?
Good one, isn't it? I'm in that position myself at the moment. I've paid a bunch of money to get someone awesome. So that's my answer.
Okay.
But what my experience, and this is really the last 18 months or so, is where I've been doing this. My experience has been that has led me to lift my game. So if that is what happens, then I think it's a good thing.
And what's your experience of what people say they're earning versus what they're actually earning when they're in the negotiation process?
That's true. You could probably discount it by 10 to 20%.
So 10 to 20% is usually a fair game. Okay.
Probably. Or, you know, leave that margin for error. I would also caution against, and this is, you know, on the other side of things, the one thing you should not do if you have a staff member leaving because they're saying they're going to get more money, don't ever offer them more to stay, because they won't. They'll stay for a short term. They're already 90% of the way out the door.
Okay.
And it's not just the money, you know, for the reason for them leaving. And there's research that shows that the the tenure for someone who's come back under that umbrella or that basis is very short.
Do you subscribe to, and I'm leading a bit here, you know, the whole Maslow's thing, you take money off the table, then what the next thing they want to talk about is self-actualization and doing things they love. Do you believe people get to a point where it's not about the money, it's about the who I'm working with? And when do you think that kicks in?
Oh, absolutely. I do a lot of work with not-for-profits, and they attract a lot of highly skilled people who aren't getting highly paid. So, I think that, and one thing I think that, smaller businesses like advisory firms can miss out on emphasising is that they may not have the career structure. You know, they might not be able to say, well, you know, in 2 years you'll be promoted to this, you'll be promoted to that, and whatever. But what they do offer is flexibility, usually, in not just in work time, but in your exposure to different areas of the business.
Yeah.
And so there's a whole other piece that you can use to attract players, A players that isn't just the dollars.
So
You might be
freedom.
close to home, for example. That's something we know
Absolutely.
that's in the mountains, someone's sick of commuting. And that was my experience, actually. When we first moved up here, I was commuting to Uni of New South Wales at Kensington. And then a job came up working as a consultant for another HR consultant. And of course, I jumped at that.
That's awesome. I want to just stop for a second. I'd love if everybody in the audience, I'd love you to just take a think now and go, for your business, your environment, rather than focus on money, what's the thing? What's the enticing element of your business or working within your group that you think would be of particular interest to A players? I'd love you to think about that and maybe just type it in the box so I can get you guys thinking about how you can present yourselves and your businesses to A players in such a way that you don't have to worry about the money so much. I think that'd be a really useful thing to do. Zoraida, by the way, we are recording this, and we will make a recording available to anybody who's here, as well as it will go on the members site, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. This is awesome stuff. While everybody's typing at the box, Susan, I'd love to ask, in your opinion, you're an advice firm, you're looking for a really great advisor, a really great practice manager. Basically, you're looking for one of those A players. Give us the recommendation as to where you would go, or the channels you'd look for to maximize your chance of getting someone, if that's a reasonable request.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. I think the best option is to talk to your networks.
Okay.
But we don't always have time for that. So obviously you're going to, advertise. And some people will be using recruiters. If you have a great recruiter, it can be a marriage made in heaven. If they get to know your business and know exactly what you're looking for, then that can be well worth whatever you pay for them. But my number one tip is ask around.
I love it. I ran a webinar last week, which was based on the book The Who by Jeff Smart. And one of the great tools they talk about is make a list of 10 people that you could go to or phone up and say, hey, if I was going to hire my next amazing person, who would you suggest I speak to?
Yeah, that's
so
great.
rather than go and formalize it, rather than go through Seek, just do that and see what comes up, because.
And it's easier to do these days. Why not go on LinkedIn and do that?
Totally. Just go and stalk some people. Jeff says flexibility around hours could be his. Absolutely, especially given the area. Elizabeth Hatton says business development, explore of own interest, fee for service. I know Zoraida, yours would definitely be the ability to work deeply in strategic advice and modeling with clients and have work with a small group. Nina, yours would totally be the opportunity to learn from some advisors who are seriously good at what they do, good in the investment space, and work with high net worth clients. And James and Marcel, yours would very much be, my feeling, knowing your business, would be the collegiate working atmosphere, as well as the opportunity to actually be part of growing something. So each of you here, from what I know, has got the opportunity to sort of, unique thing in there that I think would appeal to the right person. Susan,
I just wanted to add to that all those examples are things that would appeal. I don't subscribe a lot to the Gen Y thing, but if you're looking to hire younger people, the research shows that's the sort of, all those things are things that they're looking for: development, flexibility, learning, growth.
Beanbags.
Yeah.
Beanbags, no, tables.
Not the beanbags.
I'm joking. I'm the beanbags. So right actually says flexible working hours, a calm environment. I love that. Strategic planning.
Yeah.
Calm environment. That is, absolutely.
That beats beanbags for me.
It does beat beanbags. It's like a breather. Yeah. Let's sort of talk a bit more about hiring, and then we'll move on to the culture. Questions. Like, give me an idea of what you suggest. If someone is sitting there and they've got a bunch of resumes, they think they've got the right people in front of them, and they're going to get involved in the hiring process. Give me your tips for making sure it's a worthwhile process, rather than what's your favorite superhero?
For the interview questions?
Yeah, I think that was what Zoraida really wanted to know about.
Yeah. I could probably easier start with what not to ask.
Right.
Don't ask where do you want to be in 5 years' time. Don't ask what car do you drive.
Okay.
I have heard somebody say that's one of their favourite questions, and I really object to that one. Probably because I would drive around in a bomb, but anyway. And don't ask questions. A lot goes into the phrasing of the question. So
Yep.
if you ask somebody, how do you deal with difficult people? The answer you'll get will probably be an imaginary response of how they think you would like them to deal with a difficult client.
Yeah.
And so the question will be better phrased. Can you tell me about a time in the past when you've had to deal with a difficult client? And you're looking for the situation, the action they took, and ideally what they learnt from that as well.
Love it. Why is it so important to ask for actual situations? And how can you tell when someone's making it up on the spot versus, you know, it's genuine?
Oh, just the same way as you can tell when anyone's lying to you, I suppose. You're asking about actual examples because you want to know what their behaviour is like in real life, not the ideal them. And you know, there's evidence that past behaviour is the best predictor of future behaviour. So that's what we're looking for. What is their past behaviour? What's their natural way of responding?
Fantastic. That's good stuff.
And I really love it when someone comes up with an example that didn't quite work, but they can tell you why what they didn't work and what they learned from it and what they do next time. So you need to be prepared to tease out responses to get to that, rather than just take what they tell you on face value.
So what's your favourite question for teasing out the story behind the story? Yeah,
tell me more about that.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Cool. Can we talk a bit about psychometric testing? Because that's, I think,
yeah, sure.
If I remember right, that was one of the first things that you and I connected about.
Yeah.
And you gave me a real crash course in Harrison. I think you actually did. You did one for me.
Yes,
that's exactly right. And I'm looking at this test going, I hate that it's right, but it's right.
Yes, it's sometimes a bit confronting to see ourselves in black and white.
So maybe there's a lot of people out there whose knowledge of psychometric testing is maybe telling them what their DISC profile is, or giving them a colour on Myers-Briggs, which, don't get me wrong, is great stuff, but that's not what you do, right?
No, that's not what I do. I use Harrison assessments. I would say that every psychometric has its place, and so you need a few ground rules for choosing what you're going to use, particularly in recruitment. And just before I go on to that, anyone who's on this call who would like to try the psychometric like Stu did, please get in touch. We'll have contact details at the end, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely.
Happy to give you a free trial. So how our clients use Harrison in recruitment is often between a first and second interview. So they'll have the first interview, they will have pretty much decided probably who it is they want to employ. And then Harrison gets implemented as a check, I guess a sense check, because it can pick up things that you might not have picked up in the interview or the resume. So having said that, we're really only looking at using the psychometric as, I tell my clients, 30% of your decision making. It's not the be all and end all. It can confirm what you already thought. It might tell you some things that you didn't know. And some of those things might also be where you think, yeah, okay, so they're not so strong on that area. I still want to hire them for the other, 60%, 70% of reasons. But at least now I know how to manage them when I bring them on board.
Right.
So when you look, oh, sorry.
No, far away.
I was just going to give tips for choosing a psychometric tool. Obviously, I think Harrison's best, but you know, there are others out there. So you need to look for something that is actually designed for job fit and not just a personality test, because that will just get too confusing. When I say designed for job fit, Harrison looks not just at their personality, but at values and motivations. So you get the cultural fit. You also get the sort of tasks they like to do, the sort of work environment they like working in. You know, do they like to work fast or slow? Yeah. And also how they might act under stress. So all useful things to know. And then we can also customise a job template precisely to the role that you're recruiting for. So you're looking for exactly what you need in that role.
Let me share a quick case study, because you came in to do a piece of work with a client of mine a while back. They were hiring a planner. They were coming to a very small team. And, you know, they had a really harmonious working environment with the two of them, and bringing a third person into a business, as, you know, Hiroshi Mikitani talks about, you know, when you go from 1 to 3, the business completely changes. This advisor was coming out of corporate, seemed to interview well, but I think we all had this nagging feeling, as you do when intuition kicks in, that something wasn't quite right. And what came out from the psychometric testing was did not enjoy admin, was not a team player, did not work well in a group, and preferred to be a lone wolf. And straight away, it wasn't that it swayed the decision making. It made everybody in the room go, okay, that's what it was. That's what the gut feeling thing, and potentially stop that business from making a significant error in hiring, not a bad person, but the wrong person for what they needed.
Yeah,
the wrong roll their sleeves up. Yeah, it was really useful. For those who wonder about the cost of psychometric testing, can you give us a bit of an idea of what it costs and your view on you know, the benefits? I mean, you've already mentioned you should only get it done once you've decided. Yeah. Why you obviously think it's a good investment. So just give people an idea of why you think it's a good spend.
Why it's a good investment? How
much it is, and why you think it's worth spending money on.
For most roles, the selection kit or selection pack is $450. So that gives you the job success analysis, which compares the individual to all the traits, and we measure 175 different traits. I should have mentioned that 175 different traits in an online questionnaire that takes 20 to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So you get the job success analysis report, you get the interview guide, which gives you questions similar to the example I gave earlier for that person. So it picks out the traits that you need to be asking them about and gives you a question and tells you what to look for. So it's basically a form that you can complete as you're completing the interview. And then there's the third report that you get in that is a report called How to Attract the Candidate. And that basically tells you what their hot buttons are, what and other things that you need to know about the candidate, what's important to them, what's less important to them. Also useful, although it's called How to Attract, it's also useful information for onboarding. So if you decide to employ that person, you'll know a lot more detail because it picks up traits that may not necessarily be in the job success analysis report.
Love it. And tell me if this is wrong, it's entirely possible it is, but you can also analyse your star performers in your team and understand what it is about them that makes them your star performers, so you can go out and find people with similar attributes.
Yeah, so that's where that can sit behind your customisation. So if you've got a star performer, we can run them through Harrison, find out what makes them a star performer, and then we tweak your job template, or the job success formula as we call it, to match that. And there's things as simple as one advisor I recruited for, I knew she was very direct and blunt in her communication, and we have something we measure that's called tolerance of bluntness. So for people working with her, we always include that at quite a high level to make sure that they're not going to dissolve in tears next time she's a bit direct.
Fantastic. Tolerating bluntness, otherwise known as communication in South Africa.
You need to be careful.
Don't get me wrong. I've got a lot of South African friends. I personally love directness. I love people who just come and say things, especially if it comes to, I don't know, we could get in a whole discussion about intent versus
I'd love to have that discussion about cultural difference in communication too.
Well, yeah, that's true. Maybe I should step away from it. I'm not the expert here. I'd love to talk to you about, we've talked a lot about getting people on board. Now let's talk about when they're on board. And there's a couple of questions that have come through, and I'd love to make sure we cover off on those before we delve into the cultural aspect. I want to just jump straight into Jeff's, because I know his topic is well worth asking. And it's kind of relevant. Jeff wants to know, how do you know if you've got the right staff versus you've got, the wrong staff, or you need specific ones that you're missing?
Yeah. I guess my easy, simple answer is going to be, well, of course you run them through Harrison. Match to the job and match to what you want on the team. There's also team reports available, so we can see how different people respond to pressure and where their relative strengths are. But aside from psychometrics, how do you know? Well, I guess you know when things start going belly up. This actually segues quite well, Stuart, into what we were talking about before we started, about that whole thing of having your one-on-one meetings, having your team meetings, making sure that you're keeping the communication open.
So what's the first signs that maybe things are about to go down a horrible spiral?
Yeah, I wrote a blog post about this recently, but it was that long ago that I can't remember. But really, there are all the obvious things. Someone's always late back from lunch, late arriving, work's messy, mistakes are made, not getting on with co-workers. I was reading about one organisation recently where during the probation period, the assessments and the management of the new staff are done by their team members, and it's the team that decides whether or not that person should stay.
Right.
Which I thought was an interesting approach, but when you think about it, it's usually the peers who know more about the person's work and how they get on.
It's the tribe has spoken, literally.
Yeah.
The democratic version of
off the island.
Very, very true. Okay, so the early signs are just, do you ever have a situation where you have performers, people who used to perform really, really well, and they kind of flip over the top and suddenly they start just losing interest, they start coming late? Is it possible to pull something back, or when you've lost somebody, is it a matter of time?
Well, that depends on what's causing it. So this is where having a good relationship and good communication comes in, because I've seen situations where there's been a real drop in performance, but it's been due to external factors, not the work. And of course, you need to be diplomatic in how much you explore those things. And all of this comes back to having the good relationship in the first place.
So let's talk about that relationship piece, which I think you tried to segue into just a moment ago.
That's cool.
What is a great communication framework? I mean, we talk about keeping your finger on the pulse, working with people, building a good relationship. Let's go practical and talk about what it should look like in your business for you to succeed.
Yeah, sure. I was laughing just now because one of my lowest scoring traits in Harrison is tolerance of structure.
Okay.
I tend to very much go with the flow,
right.
Which is why I probably tried to draw you away from your structure just then. So in terms of that regular ongoing thing, I find that, and I'm guilty of this as much as the next person, you're busy in your business and you've got a lot of client-focused stuff going on, and it's hard to have the one-on-one meetings or the team meetings. So I guess the rule is to make sure they're scheduled in, make sure they're regular, and make sure they happen. But when you get to having the actual meeting, I think it's useful to have some sort of structure there, so everyone knows where they stand. When people hear, about one-on-one meetings, they sometimes make the mistake of thinking it's all about performance, which eventually it is, but it's not managing someone's performance. You don't put off having these meetings until something's gone wrong. Ideally, you'd be having them weekly, and I would hope that it would take you no more than 10 minutes. So it's not like it's going to be a big time suck.
Mm-hmm.
And there's really only 3 questions that I think you need to ask. And the first one is, what's gone well for you this week? What are you really proud of that you've achieved this week?
Yep.
The second is, where are you stuck right now?
Yep.
And the third is, how can I help you?
Love it. What's gone well? So start on a positive, get the wins out, especially with those type A personalities who are going to go straight to the, this isn't right, that's not right. Where are you stuck? And how can I help?
Yeah.
Any tips for making sure that you're not the one who walks out there with an action item list that's 20 pieces long instead of your team? Because I reckon there's a few people on this line who maybe are naturally attuned to kind of wanting to help people and fix their problems.
Absolutely.
And they shouldn't be. They should be attuned to coming out of there with having given a bunch of tasks, not received a bunch. Any tips?
Yeah, I guess keep pushing it back to them. I'm having trouble thinking of what might be an example where somebody wants help. Hopefully it's something simple and quick that you can solve easily.
So, can I give you an example?
Yeah,
I'm really
do.
stuck because the software we've got isn't doing what I need it to do. I need to be able to do this. And I tried phoning the company and then just, they're not getting back to them. And I can't do my job until the software is fixed.
That's a great example, because I know your average business owner or manager would jump in and go, I'll call them for you.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. We'll fix it. We'll do it.
Yeah.
It's not. It's a whole bunch of people. Sorry.
Yeah. So team members often have a tendency to look to you as a problem solver. Yeah. So I guess my question then would be, well, what else have you tried? What else can you think of?
What other options?
Yeah, what other options are there?
Yeah. I sometimes like to go, great. So if I weren't here and you had to solve this problem on your own, what would your next step be? Yeah.
And in a way, not having the one-on-ones is a way of not being there and letting them get on with it. But it's also means that you're not aware of problems until they blow up. So it's a bit of a safety valve, the weekly check-in.
Love it. Safety valve. That's a really good way of explaining it. Let's just, is there anything else you wanted to add to that before we sort of talk a bit about culture?
No, I don't think so. Only that, we all have trouble struggling to find the time and making them a priority, but you'll probably end up in an even bigger mess if you don't.
I kind of feel like if you get the people around you right, it's kind of like environment drives a whole bunch of stuff. Richard Branson recently published a blog post talking about he didn't become rich and successful. He didn't become happy because he's rich and successful. He became rich and successful because he's happy. And
I love that. I love that.
If you surround yourself with people who you can communicate with, who you're connected with, and you can work together in unison, then everything sort of changes. Your perspective on everything changes. I'll ask another question. How do you deal with a situation where you've got a team where certain people are on certain journeys, certain people are on other journeys, but there's certain roadblocks that you can't seem to get everybody on board? What's the prognosis there?
Yeah. I do not know. I'm working with an organisation at the moment that's just in that situation, and what we're doing, I guess, and this is a long process. We started back in September, and they've been through a business planning cycle in that process. But what we've done is map the culture as it is at the moment.
Yeah.
And then based on what's getting in the way, but also on their strategic plan, mapped the culture that they need to deliver the outcomes for their strategic plan.
Got it.
So it's a very simple model called Culture Map. And if you imagine, and you might be able to draw this up there because there's only really three sections to it. And at the top is outcomes. And then the next section is behaviours.
Yep.
And then at the bottom is enablers and blockers.
That's really funny. We have a model in the coaching program where we talk about results. We first look at teams and go, are you getting the result?
Yeah.
If you're not getting the result, we look underneath the hood and go, great, are you doing the activity? Are you undertaking the work you need to do? And if they are, so for example, if they want to get a bunch of new clients and they're not getting the clients, we say, well, are you going out and marketing? Are you talking? Yeah. And then finally, if we understand that they are making the calls and do activities, we go, great, are you taking the right approach? As in, do you actually have the skills and capabilities to do the thing you want to? And if it's an activity problem, it's really easy. It's a time management, it's a productivity, it's a motivation thing. But if it's under the hood and it's actually an approach thing, then it becomes it's a training and skills issue. So it sounds kind of
it's very similar. And yes, just yesterday I had this conversation with another coach because I've been using this organisation wide, and we were saying this same model could work for coaching. So when you're mapping your current culture, you start in the middle with behaviours. So what are we seeing? How do people behave around here? And then you move down and talk, well, what's happening that's causing these behaviours? And usually while you're having that discussion, you become aware of the outcomes that you're getting from particular behaviours.
Great. Can you give us just a quick example of, a behaviour that you would map out and some of the things that might be?
We've got silos in our business. Accounts don't talk to sales. Would be a typical example. So that would be your behaviour. Your enablers and blockers there could be communication channels, misunderstandings. They're blockers, obviously. Enablers could be, our meetings. We have regular meetings with them, but the message isn't getting across. So to enable that, we need to have an agenda that means that we're communicating effectively in meetings. And then the outcomes that you might be getting from accounts and sales not speaking to each other could be internal disputes within the organisation, or it might be that you're just not, it could have an effect on cash flow, or it could be affecting your clients. So that would be one example.
So business isn't growing, great. Well, we don't have a culture of going out and marketing. We don't have a culture of actually going and talking to people. Sorry to use the sales example. What are the things that are blocking it? It might be, great, people just aren't picking up the phone, or they don't feel confident, or there's a whole bunch of pet projects that are getting in the way, or there are organizational structures which are causing people to focus their energy elsewhere.
So I've got a great example that actually with one organisation we've worked with, they're also on board with the Harrison assessment, so we've used that to map the behaviours. So one of the things that's happening in this organisation is they're highly collaborative, highly cooperative, but stuff doesn't happen. And when we looked at the leadership team, we could see that they were highly helpful, but not very good at saying what needed to be done. So very helpful, collaborative, open, all these lovely warm strengths, but when it came to holding people accountable, that wasn't happening. So they weren't getting their outcomes.
What are some other, we're sort of running low on time, but this has been absolutely awesome, Susan. What are some other tips you'd have for just creating a great vibe in the office for, creating something positive? What are the aspects that you'd need to make sure you consider?
Yeah, well, I'm a bit of an old grump in that, you know, I'm a bit skeptical about, you know, team building activities that don't come naturally. You know, the people enjoy each other's company and they want to go for drinks together, that's fine, but please don't force me to go if I don't. I'd rather spend time with my friends rather than my
Yeah.
workmates. So I think there's a lot of artificial things that we try to do to say we've got a great culture around here. And you know, those things are important. You know, the bowl of fruit's nice. There's a
Yeah.
lot of nice things that you can do for your staff, but they're probably not going to be appreciated if people don't feel that they've got the autonomy to make decisions and do what they want to do. That they're trusted. That what they do is worthwhile and working towards something worthwhile, and that they're realistically compensated for what they do.
And I read some of that. The key to motivating people is about two things. It's give people the ability to make decisions for themselves, and that ability to make decisions has to be done with a degree of autonomy. And people literally, like, that's, in my experience, that's the main difference in often employees and entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs know that they have to make decisions every day about their business, and as a result, they're emotionally invested. Whereas employees often, they kind of know that the decisions they make really aren't actual decisions. They're sub, you know, whatever we call it, decisions that, and as a result, that motivations may be lost.
Yeah, it's quite funny. This is an aside, but it's a good example. In the building that I work from, we're on the 13th floor, and one of my colleagues says you can tell the employees from the business owners in this building because the employees get in, they don't press the door close button. They just get in, wait for the doors to close.
That's really. I heard a similar thing about the disc profile. You know, the D, the I, the S, and the C around the list. So 4 people are waiting for the list. The D gets in and slams the close button as fast as we can. The I goes across the door, puts his hand up, and goes, "Hey, everybody, this one's free." The S sort of stands outside to make sure everyone else is in. Meanwhile, the C gets in, looks at how many people are actually allowed in the elevator.
That's right.
And stares at people till someone gets out. I actually thought that was very, very clever.
So, just while you're talking, I thought of one more thing. Oh yes, and that was only that none of us like to be micromanaged. I've yet to hear anyone say, "I love it when my manager looks over my shoulder. I love it when my manager corrects my work. I love it, you know, when my manager redoes something that I've already done."
So how do you cure a micromanager?
They need to learn to delegate and need to learn to let go. I've spent a lot of time with advisors and other business owners, and I guess I put myself in this category as well. And you know, it's your baby, and of course you want to look after it the way that you think is correct. But it's a real barrier to growth if you can't let other people look after it for a while.
I think the best advice I was ever given is understand that when they first start doing what you did, they're not going to do it as well. But then one day they will do it better. And the second thing to say is understand that when you get people in, the end result is your business will look very different to the way you think it does. But it will be their business too. As a result, you know, that's when you get to a point where you can start doing things you love and not do everything. I think it's really, it sort of changed my view on it.
And I love that whole thing of hiring someone smarter than you.
Yeah, me too. I'd love to I reckon we keep going for another hour. There's two things.
Oh, at least.
We're out of time. And also the power cord for my computer's over there and my computer's here. So I'm watching the percentage sort of dial down slowly, but I've managed to make it this far. Susan, it's every time we meet and we talk, I learn so much.
Well, likewise, Stuart. I learn a lot from you too.
And I just wanted to sort of summarize some of what we spoke about. We started off, just doing a really quick overview of your journey, which has been incredible. And I think you've missed a lot out there in terms of co-authoring. We could have talked about time in Sweden. You are one of the most well-read and learned and just measured people and where you think about things and do things. It's been an absolute pleasure sort of knowing you and being able to sort of learn from you. We talked a lot about hiring, really great stuff about, you know, how to attract A players, what not to ask, what car do you drive, where do you want to be in 5 years. The psychometrics, as always, is so useful. And I think you mentioned that if people wanted to, you know, go and get almost like a free taster of what Harrison's all about, where's the best place to go so they can grab that very kind offer?
Rather than read out a URL, I think either connect with me on LinkedIn.
Yep.
Or via email.
Well, I'll send out your email if you don't mind.
Yeah, great.
In follow-up so everyone can get it. But even if you just grab one of the trial examples of what it is, you would just be amazed at the insight you can get. I actually think everyone should do one of themselves because it will tell you a little bit about your own working style. Stuff that you probably, you may know, but refuse to admit, the stuff that you probably don't admit, but you should know. As well as some of the stuff on team and culture has been really, really super useful. Is there any other questions anyone would like to jump on the table? Anything you want to sort of add to what we've spoken about, Susan?
No, I don't feel I have anything more to add at the moment. Happy to talk to anyone who has any questions about any of this. As you can tell, I love all this stuff, so I'm always happy to talk about it.
Excellent. So look, that's it from me. Again, Susan, thank you so much for your time. What have you got planned for the weekend?
Pleasure. Taking my daughter to a dance competition all day Saturday and then relaxing on Sunday.
What kind of dance?
Well, I think they're doing, their dance is a hip hop, but you're probably not lucky enough to be into this this phase of life yet. You can spend a lot of time sitting around drafty halls for aesthetics and things.
Hermione's just started doing ballet.
Oh,
so
okay.
I'm getting to go along and be the kind
of
the ballet dad for the Saturday on a Saturday. But I think at this age it's more sort of, you know, just jumping around and pretending to be,
it's very cute at this age.
It is very cute. I think Rachel's just enjoying buying the tutus, to be honest. That's the main thing. This feels like we're done. Thanks again, Susan. For everybody else that's on the line, as per usual, the recording will be available to you a couple of days, well, maybe 3 or 4 days from now. We'll send out an email. If in the meantime you have any questions, I'm going to send out Susan's contact details. If you'd like to have a look at Harrison, I got a lot out of using it. Alternatively, we are nearly at the end of the month in Leverage program. Next month, we're going to look at Attract. So keep your eye out for the monthly snapshot coming soon, but we are going to be delving into the really important business of not only attracting great clients into your business, but how to make sure you're giving them that great experience that helps them understand what financial advice is and say yes, and then finally onboard them. So I've got some great webinars lined up, all about Facebook marketing. We're going to delve deep into how to become a micro celebrity in your market. That's the one I'm looking forward to, and a whole bunch more. But other than that, I hope everyone has a great Friday. I am off to meet up with the Orange Wealth guys, Jason and Michael, and then I'm going to fly back to Sydney this afternoon. And hopefully I'm going to have a weekend of not talking. So that's it. I'm going to leave it there. Thanks again. Have a great weekend. Susan, I'll speak to you soon.
Great. Thanks.
Cheers. Bye.